All right, so today we're talking about molecular compound nomenclature. Just so you know, nomenclature is just a fancy name for how we name things, okay? So it's naming, so nomenclature means. So how do we name molecular compounds? Well, I guess it would be helpful to know what molecular compounds are first, okay? Molecular compounds, and from that word you might recognize molecule, right? Molecule. And these molecular compounds are different than ionic compounds. All right, ionic compounds are what we just got finished studying. And if you remember, ionic compounds, they bond because of what? What's the big thing about ionic compounds? They bond because of, sorry? Because of the different charges, right? Because of positive charges and negative charges, and those attract and come together and they bond. Molecular compounds, it's not because of the drastically different charges of the particles. Instead, they share, or the word is covalent. So they covalently bond. So covalent, this word here, means sharing of electrons. So it's not like one really desires electrons and the other really wants to give electrons away, and that's kind of how they form a compound. You know, that's the unequal sharing in ionic. But in covalent, it's more of an equal sharing. All right. So the simplest unit when we're talking about molecular compounds is called a molecule right there. Now, right now I know you're probably thinking, well, what really is the difference between a molecule or a molecular compound and an ionic compound? The big thing is this, is that these types of compounds, molecular compound, are mostly, and it says always, but it's not always, not all, but mostly it's nonmetals. Okay, so molecular compounds are mostly compounds made of just nonmetals. Okay, so if you're highlighting this or writing this down, molecular compounds are made primarily of nonmetals when they bond together. So if we look back to our periodic table here, and the one that you have in front of you, what we're talking about is we're kind of talking about really the nonmetals over here. Okay? Well, maybe not hydrogen. This table has hydrogen over here as a hydride, negative ion, but we won't really consider that. But anything over here, all this stuff over here, if these bond together like P and N, or N and O, or C and Cl, if they bond together, it's a molecular compound. Okay, so nonmetals bonding together, molecular compound. All right, the how you name these is because we're not talking about ions like ionic. We have a special way of naming these, and we use the prefixes. Okay, so we use these list of prefixes when naming molecular compounds. So if, I guess you all have these on your sheet, it's very important to memorize these, okay? And it shouldn't be too hard. Mono is 1, di is 2, tri 3, tetra is 4, and there are other prefixes to mean the same thing, but in chemistry, these are the ones we use, okay? So tetra for 4. There's also like quad, right? Means 4, but not in chemistry. We say tetra. Penta is 5. Hexa is 6. Hepta 7. Octa 8. Nona 9. Deca 10. Okay? So these prefixes are used when you're communicating how many atoms of each element are in a molecular compound. And of course, we'll give you lots of examples coming up. But those are the prefixes we use. Okay. So when naming molecular compounds, the prefix indicates the number of each atom. Okay. And then at the end of molecular compounds, it's always "-ide" at the end. Okay. So they end in "-ide". So the example is N2O. This is the first example. And the name for this is dinitrogen. So here's 2, right? And that 2, it refers to the nitrogen. So there's 2 nitrogens, so we call it dinitrogen, and you just name the element name. And then how many oxygens are there? If there's no number there, it means there's just one. So that's mon, and mono is the term, but you kind of sometimes drop the O. Monoxide. And here's the I to the end. Okay? So this is dinitrogen monoxide. It's not dinitride monoxide. There's no I at the end of the first one. You don't put the I there. You put the only at the end. It's not dinitrogen monooxygen. Okay, you always have to end with I at the end. And it's not dinitrogen monooxide with two O's here. Okay, so we don't put the two O's together if that happens. All right? Another example here, if there's only one atom, that's the first element, there's just one, we often drop the mono for the first atom. So mono is not used if it applies to the first atom. Okay? So this one, CO, is carbon monoxide. You've heard that molecule before, right? So that's carbon. It's not monocarbon monoxide. Okay, so it's not necessary at the first. It's not just carbon oxide. The mono is required for the second one to say that there's one. And that the reason is because you also know of another compound that's very similar, of carbon dioxide, right? So what would carbon dioxide look like as a formula? C what? O2, right? Carbon dioxide. That's where that comes from. Okay? If it was trioxide, it would be CO3. Right? If it was carbon pentaoxide, it would be what? CO5. Okay? So, yeah, you're getting it. Any questions here so far? Okay, no mono for the first one, and use the prefixes. Okay? Alright, so let's do some examples here from your worksheet. Sorry? We're going to do a sample of a bunch of these, yeah. Alright, so CF4, the elements we have are carbon and fluorine, right? So, how many carbons do we have at the beginning? Just one. So do I put monocarbon? No, I don't have to put monocarbon. So you just write the element name, carbon, and then there's 4 fluorines. So the prefix for 4 is tetra. And then there's tetra, then there's 4 fluorines, right? So what do I put at the end here? Thank you. Fluoride. UO, remember, for fluorine, and then ide at the end of molecular compounds. Carbon tetrafluoride. That's awesome. Number 4, this one looks like an ion that we just have been working with, right? SO3. But notice, okay, there's no charge here. So it's not the sulfite ion, right? It's not sulfite because there's no charge here. This is a molecular compound. Remember, sulfur is here, oxygen is here. These are two nonmetals, and so yeah, they're going to be, oops, not that one. They're going to be molecular compounds. So, sulfur, and then what do I put here? How do I say 3 oxygens? Trioxide. Very good. Yeah, this is pretty easy, hey? Pretty easy. And let's skip down to number 9 then. Number 9. Difluorine. So we have 2 parts there, di and fluorine. Which prefix, what number does di refer to? 2. So we've got F2. Yeah, don't put the 2 in front. The 2 always has to be a subscript. Difluorine. And then octa. Which one is octa? Right, like octopus, right? Okay, 8 tentacles. So octa chloride. So what do I write? Cl8 as a subscript. Okay. Any questions on that one? Okay, why don't you do number 13? Do number 13 on your own here. I'll freeze the screen and then I'll show you in a second. All right, so if you put dinitrogen tetraoxide, that's fine. Also, you know, as we've just looked up on the internet as well, there's also many examples where the A has been dropped. So, whoops, I just didn't drop it right there. So tetroxide. I will accept both at this point. The monooxide is a little more clear cut, but you can't always say that you. There's not really a rule governing, you know, every circumstance. I don't think, because mono you would drop that for oxide. Tetra you can drop that. Pent I've also seen lots of times where the A is dropped there as well. But for others, like for the tri, you don't drop the I. You don't drop the I here. So generally, it's okay if you drop the yeah. If you drop a vowel before another vowel starts, then that would be appropriate. So let's just go with that. Oops. Okay. So tetroxide is more common. So if there's a vowel before another vowel, let's just say you drop it. Okay. All right. So like I say, I will accept either because the rules are not super clear cut, but this would probably be the better option. Okay. What about number 25? Go ahead and do number 25. Write that formula. Okay, so there's the answer to number 25. That one's pretty straightforward. It's just 1 phosphorus and 3 chlorines. Just a note here with that 2 vowel rule. It's not always a rule. Like the diiodine, you do need both I's there, because it's not like diodine. You need to have the prefix as well. So this one you'll see the 2 I's are shown here, and for other, the di is never really dropped. The I's on the di's are never really dropped. Okay, did you have a question? So number 5 and number what? 7? Okay, well let's do, they had a question first here. So chlorine dioxide, so that's Cl, and then dioxide, yeah, that's O2. And number 5 was the other one? Okay, so you've got 4 phosphorus atoms, so it's going to be, no, you don't do the ide for the first one. So tetraphosphorus, and then oxide, yeah. So you drop the vowel there, so oxide. It's a mouthful. All right, so go ahead and finish the rest of the sheet here for some more practice, and if you have questions, I'll reveal some answers for you in a bit.